Hi, it's Bumble. Welcome back to my channel. So, I haven't seen this movie since I was a kid, actually. It's one of those, it's like we had it on DVD. I probably watched it like once or twice, but it was like when I was really little. And I don't know what happened to the DVD. It's one of like many movies where it's like I remember watching it young and then it's just kind of gone. I don't know where it is. It might be with like a relative or something. I'll have to check. I think I might know who it might. I can't imagine giving away this movie. It's so good. And it's funny because it's like when I end up rewatching movies I haven't seen since I was a kid, it's like even if I kind of remember liking them or don't remember having an opinion at all, I always get kind of nervous and kind of excited to rewatch those specific movies because I never know if it's like gonna be really good, or maybe I like it more that I'm an older, or maybe it's one of those where I have like good memories of watching it and then finding out it like hasn't aged well, or like kind of is worse than I thought. I'll be honest, I don't remember what Kid Me's opinion of this movie was. I just mostly remember the jousting, actually. I thought that was like the whole movie. I mean, that's like the main thing. It's about this guy who's like born poor and he wants to be a knight, and the knight that he serves ends up like dying, and he has to like he decides to quickly replace him, and then becomes like it's like his journey to become a knight in his own right, and that's why it's called A Knight's Tale. And it's funny because there's like so much more going on with this movie, like besides the jousting, which is pretty cool, where like the main character has this group of companions, his squires, but they're all like genuinely friends. Honestly, like my favorite part of the movie. And he's like trying to win the love of this woman who's like a higher class than him. I'm pretty sure she's a princess if I remember correctly. Her name's Jocelyn. Oh yeah, the main character's name is William. I'll get into characters. So it's like there's like a bunch of other things going on that I just kind of completely had forgotten about. And it's funny that a lot, even though I enjoyed the jousting stuff, that's like kind of the main thing with the movie, there's like all this other stuff going on that I ended up actually liking more. But that's the thing, I didn't remember what my opinion of this originally was when I was younger, but I am so glad I rewatched this, because it's like at first I was watching this and I thought like, okay, it's kind of like a bit more comedic than I was expecting, and I like comedies, and I didn't watch this all in one sitting. It's like I started watching it this morning, and it was like when I was eating breakfast, and then I stopped and I was doing a bunch of drawing and other things and had to go out today. Then I was like, okay, let me just finish this in the evening when I can just chill, and then I watched the rest of it. And I'm so glad I did. Even watching it where it's not in one sitting, it's like I still was like keeping track of everything, and enjoying it just as much as if I watched the full, I think it's like 2 hours 12 minutes or something in one go. But yeah, I'm glad that I went back to it, because sometimes it is like I start movies and then I don't finish, or I'm just like, okay, whatever, maybe I'll finish later. I'm so glad I went back, and I was going to anyway, because it wasn't just like my opinion of it was kind of changing as I was going along. Not that I ever hated it or anything. It was more like I was like, oh, okay, this is like kind of more comedic than I was expecting. That actually made me a little worried at the start of like, oh, maybe this isn't going to be as good as I thought it was going to be. And then I was like getting into it and stuff, and it's like the main character, he's like gaining more companions and like becoming more of a knight and winning his matches and stuff, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm liking this. And then it's like there's some emotional scenes that are kind of spread throughout that are just like so good. Honestly, I like fell in love with this movie by the end of it. It's kind of funny, actually. I wrote in my notes, I didn't take notes throughout the whole thing. I started taking notes like quite a while, like at least like an hour into the movie or something, and I wrote like Damn it, this I was gonna give this a 10 out of 10, but then like right after the ending and before the credits, literally the final scene of the movie is it's not even like a fart joke, it's just them like farting, and it like completely ruined the tone of this like really nice ending. And I'm gonna be like spoiling stuff with this movie, and I know it's supposed to be like a funny little bit, and this movie is actually just really funny. I haven't laughed like that watching this in like a while. But then the fart thing threw me off so hard, and I was like, damn, I gotta give this like, it went from like 10 out of 10 to 9 out of 10. I was just like, damn it. You could have just ended right, you know, with the way it was going and everything. And it's like a short little scene, and I'm like kidding, of course, but that's like the one thing I was like, no, I don't really care for fart humor anyway. But yeah, I don't really have a lot of notes. It's kind of more like general opinions and stuff. Let me kind of just walk you through it a bit of like the characters and stuff and sort of my opinions on them, and then I'll kind of go more into like my notes and stuff. So I talked about the main character a little bit. His name's William. He is the son of this guy. I don't remember what the title is. It's like the people or like the job exactly that are in charge of like people being, you know, they get put in the stocks and like get decapitated and stuff. But like his family, it's just like this guy and his dad. I mean, he doesn't really get to see his dad a lot. I'll get into that in a bit. And because they're like separated for like 12 years, so like he grows up poor, and his dad's always telling him it's basically like you can like change your fate if you work hard enough. I just really love the wording of it though. It's like changing the stars, it's how it's referred to. I feel like that just sounds cooler, honestly. And William's dream ever since he was a child was like becoming a knight. So you get to see him like grow as a character and stuff, but you also get to see his backstory. It's kind of like sprinkled in throughout the movie, and I actually really like the pacing with that too, the way they did it, where it's like his flashbacks start off of like him and his dad and like wanting to be a knight, and then they continue to like the point where he gets separated from his dad, and you kind of get to see of like, okay, this is why he was with this knight like as a squire in the first place, and how he met some of his companions and stuff, and they've been like lifelong friends, and then that kind of leads up to him returning to his hometown and reuniting his dad, which I felt like was one of the most emotional scenes in the movie. I almost cried with William's reunion with his dad. But I just really like him as a main character, honestly. I haven't seen Heath Ledger in a movie in so long. I mean, I know that he's been passed away since 2008. When I was younger, the movies I think I mostly remembered him from was as the Joker in like those mid 2000s. I think it was actually also from like 2008, around there, the Batman movies where Christian Bale was Batman, you know, the Dark Knight movies. I've also been meaning to rewatch those actually at some point, because like when I was younger, I didn't really know anything about Batman. The movies I think kind of scared me a little bit, not because I was like so young, but you know, they have like a very mature tone, especially compared to like some of the older Batman movies that kind of go a bit more. I'm thinking of the ones with like Danny DeVito and like Jim Carrey as the Riddler, which look like kind of a little bit more campy. But the Dark Knight ones I remember being kind of serious, but I always just remember like in terms of like people that play like live action versions of the Joker, I always just think of Heath Ledger's, and that's like the character I remember him for. But I forgot that he's, you know, the main character in this movie, and it makes me sad, you know, that he's been like passed away for so long. He does such a good job as this character, as this like very prideful knight, where it even gets to the point at the end where, you know, he's gonna be like put to death, and all of his friends, it's like also another emotional scene, or because his companions just love him so much, honestly. Their friendship's all just really sweet, and they're telling him to run, and he doesn't want to run because it's like his goals with the movie is like, you know, he wants to become a knight, but he also is in love with this woman named Jocelyn, which I'm also I'll get to that. But also he has this rival character who's like the movie's villain. Hold on, let me see, what's his name? Adamar, who's like just like such a dickhead, honestly. And wanting to beat him. And I like how the way the story kind of puts off their inevitable battle where William's going into like all of these tournaments and he wants to fight this one specific guy, and the rival guy is like never there or anything until they finally get to fight again, because they have like multiple fights in the movie. They finally get to fight again at the end. It's kind of like a natural way in the story to like put off, you know, their inevitable encounter. But yeah, the main character, he's pretty cool to follow. He's like this underdog. You're like rooting for his success and everything. And I just even think the beginning's interesting too, where it's like he's never gotten the chance to prove himself and to be a knight, and he finally gets that chance. I mean, it does suck that it comes at the cost, you know, like his master dying and everything at like the very start of the movie, and he's like, okay, we gotta be able to eat and everything. Let's give it a shot to finish this match. And he finally, I mean, the whole thing is like he's hiding his identity too, because it's only like people, you know, that are like of like a royal lineage, or not specific. No, it's not specifically royal lineage. I mean, there is like royalty people in this movie. There's like a very important prince character, but it's like people, you know, that are able to like trace back their families. It's like the poor are not allowed to compete. So the whole time William, you know, is pretending to like come from this like famous made up family and stuff, which I was kind of expecting, you know, like a liar reveal. You know, it's like someone when they're under like a false identity and stuff. I was kind of expecting, I never really like those scenes, but one of those reveals and stuff, I mean, they're like, it's more like his identity's kind of revealed. Well, it's first to the love interest character Jocelyn, actually, like quite a while into the movie, and then it's kind of, it's more so like the rival finding out, you know, and it's like this big scene and stuff. But I like the way it was handled. I feel like sometimes those scenes and the way the people are revealed, something about it that like kind of makes me cringe a little. I think because it always just feels like it plays out the same way. But this movie does it so dramatically and like handles it so well that it just everything just like flows really well in this, honestly. Okay, I mentioned Jocelyn. I guess I'll talk about her next. Her and William, they're in love, and William and the rival character, they're like competing for her affections, even though Jocelyn only really is in love with William, and you know, she doesn't know who he is at first. I think if I remember right, you know, because I said I started this movie like at the beginning of today, actually, so I don't completely remember the start. I think her and William have like an encounter before he has to like pretend to be a knight or something, which I always kind of like that for these kind of situations of like two people fall in love but they don't know who like the other person is. Like they get to meet as like their true selves at least like once or during like their first meeting. And like they have a scene where she like kind of knows who he is of overhearing, and I always thought it was kind of funny too. I'm glad the movie kept track of it, where William, he has to go by this like other name for most of the movie, but then when he's with his friends, you know, they refer to him as William and stuff because they're pals and they know his identity and everything. And Jocelyn at one point is like, hey, my lady in waiting, you know, like her servant person, has heard your friends call you William. What's up with that? And I thought she would be kind of a little bit mad of like, you lied to me about your identity or whatever. And instead she actually just smiles and is like, oh yeah, I don't care what your name is as long as you're mine. And they like kind of finally romantically like get together. I mean, they still have like the big kiss and everything, and they're not like together, like the rival reveals towards the end of like, oh yeah, I'm like set to marry Jocelyn and stuff. And he has this viewpoint of Jocelyn as like a prize to be won rather than a person, compared with like William, who absolutely adores Jocelyn and everything. And I find their relationship really interesting, where it's like, yes, he's head over heels for her and everything, and it's sometimes very awkward with her. Like there's this part where he is like kind of rude to her and has to like write this letter to win her back, and his friends all help. They all pitch in these like really romantic, like poetry-esque like lines. I mean the whole letter basically is a poem of, and they're talking about like their own experiences with romance and stuff, and it like charms Jocelyn, and she later finds William, they're in like a church or something, and is like, oh, I want the poetry again now. And there's a lot of bullshitting in this movie, actually. Not just of like William, you know, having to pretend to be like a made-up person and everything, you know, so they don't find out like the circumstances of his birth, because it is a serious thing at the end of the movie of like, if the people in charge of the tournaments find out that you're like not of noble birth, you like will be punished and put to death and everything. It is like a serious threat throughout the movie and stuff. But yeah, William and his pals have to like bullshit their way through so many things, especially William. It's always just so funny to me, but he like can't recite the poetry to Jocelyn, and there's a lot of times where he kind of sometimes rightfully gets like frustrated with her, and he doesn't ever like hide it or anything, and sometimes he does just kind of say the wrong thing. Like I mentioned, he's like a very prideful character, not just like in terms of the jousting, but like with everything. And I like that he has these sort of, it is, I guess, sometimes kind of like a flaw, like his pride kind of gets too much and he ends up in bad situations and things, but I like that it isn't like he's constantly happy with Jocelyn. He does get frustrated with her at times, and she with him as well. The relationship and the way it builds throughout the story feels very natural, and I do like that, you know, I think it's like towards the middle of the movie when they kind of admit like their feelings to each other and stuff. I mean they're kind of flirting with each other throughout the whole thing, and it's nice that you kind of already have their relationship in a sense before you get to the end of the movie where they have like, you know, the big kiss and everything. I just really like their relationship. It was nice. I want to talk about, let me see, I'm trying to think of other people that interact with William. Yeah, I want to talk about him and his dad, actually, and then like finally I want to talk about the friend group, his companions, and squires and stuff. Just like so bad. They really are like the heart of the movie, honestly, and a lot of where the comedy comes from. But William with his dad, I mentioned it a little bit. He, you know, his dad's like always believed in him and wanting William to like follow his heart and stuff, and he ends up, you know, having to kind of give William this sort of becoming the apprentice of this like well-known knight as like a way to give him a better life. And you get that scene, it's like right before William and his group, they end up going to London. They all haven't been there in so long, and William's saying like, oh, I haven't been there in 12 years, and it's like when he's a little kid, and then it shows the flashback of like him and his dad, because you've only seen the dad in like flashbacks so far, and they have to say goodbye to each other, and I like that the dad actually, you know, goes with William to like give him away and gets to meet the person that William ends up working for, who seems like a good guy and everything, but it's like sad seeing each other, and they have these sort of phrases they say to each other, and it ends up coming in handy later, you know, because the dad, he gets to see William again, but like hasn't seen him since he was a kid. But yeah, he gets separated from his dad, and like as a kid is wondering like when I finally get to go home again, and it's, you know, only as an adult, and it's so sweet and kind of sad when he gets to see his dad. William is like talking to this like local girl from the same town he grew up in, and the girl's saying like, oh yeah, your dad still lives in the same house, because William had just assumed like his dad was dead, but then you find out the dad is blind, and William at first is not saying who he is, and I thought, oh no, please don't have this be this thing where his dad just doesn't ever find out who he is. But then the dad goes to touch his face. It's not like he'd be able to recognize him from his voice, because he's not going to sound the same as a kid. But he goes to touch his face, and it's like the phrases I mentioned, you know, that he had like told his son and stuff. They're not like code words to recognize each other. It was more so about like the kind of thing of changing your stars and certain things kind of that both of them know, and he's able to recognize his son. But I almost got kind of emotional when they reunite, because like it's like right before the dad finds out who William is, William's pretending to like be, you know, the kind of knight persona, the person he's like pretending to be, and being like, oh, I have news of your son, he's doing great. And the dad like, you know, starts crying, and it just feels so real that it you know, kind of tugs your heartstring a bit. And they get to like catch up, and the dad like wants to meet all of William's friends and everything. It's really sweet. And that meeting does come at the cost of like getting William in trouble and later, but I'm just so glad he gets to see his dad again, and the dad gets to show up for the tournament. And even though, you know, he can't see and everything, so he can't really like watch the tournament, one of William's friends, he's this writer, I'll talk about him in a bit, he's also this like announcer for the tournaments where he like announces William, and it's in a very like getting the audience, the in-universe audience of like the tournaments, I mean, like hyped and everything. And William, you know, like all these tournaments is competing under this like fake name, but for his like final tournament, the big championship fight against his rival, he gets to be under his own name and as a knight. And the dad, you get to like a close-up of the dad, and he's really, you could see just how happy he is of hearing the crowd chanting William's name and everything. It's so nice. But yeah, his dad, William's dad, isn't like in a ton of the movie, but for a lot of the scenes he's in, especially like, you know, once he actually gets to be part of the story and not just the flashbacks, it's just so nice, honestly. But yeah, let me talk about some other things first, actually. I feel like I want to kind of go through some of my general notes, and then talking about like the friend group and more about like some of the ending stuff. I want to say the kid, I haven't looked at the list of like all the actors. I did actually recognize a couple of them, like a few of the actors for like William's friends and stuff, but I haven't like looked up a whole list or anything. I do have it like pulled up on Google just in case. I'll have to like look through it more later. But whoever the kid is, that the child actor that plays William in the flashbacks when he's probably like 10 or something, looks so much like William as an adult, like the actual actor and everything. It's kind of crazy. It's not just like the hair and stuff, but it's even just kind of the eyes or some of the facial expressions. That's cool. They found someone. I always find that really impressive, actually, when it's like they'll have a kid actor play like someone in a you know, kid version of an adult in like a flashback in like a show or whatever, and they'll find someone, sometimes it is just like a completely, like they're like not related or anything, you know, and they'll look so much like them. Or sometimes I find it funny where I'll like read through later or whatever of like, oh, it's a family member, like a younger cousin, and that's why they have like such a like insanely strong resemblance. And sometimes that's like so cool with movies. Like I watched the Michael Jackson movie, the biopic movie in theaters a while ago, where they got one of Michael Jackson's family members, and he looks so much like Michael when I was watching the movie, especially at like certain angles. It like really threw me off. during the whole movie. Oh man, I forgot to talk about that one. I should have made a video like after I watched it, because I like definitely had some thoughts. It was really cool to see it in theaters. Anyway, I mean, I don't think I can at this point, just because I don't really remember as much, and my reactions to it aren't like and memory of the movie isn't as like fresh and stuff. But I will mention real quick that I did like it, especially the concert scenes were really fun. But anyway, sorry, back to this movie. The kid actor, they found some the resemblance between like William as a kid and as an adult is pretty good. I like that when William in like the final flashback is taken in the service of this night, his future friend Roland is also there. And I mean, I could tell, you know, they're not like the same age. Roland is like an older guy and stuff. And he's like, he looks like he's an adult or something when he meets William for the first time, or William's a kid. But it's kind of cool that you get to see that they've known each other for so long. Because I feel like out of all of William's friends, Roland is the one that's like the most cautious and the one that's kind of the most sort of protective of like William's safety in a sense. And I feel like that makes a lot of sense of knowing that he's the one that's not only known William the longest, but also like has literally seen him grow up from like a really little kid to an adult, and kind of as a kid seems to be like kind of mentoring him a little bit too. That was pretty nice. Something I feel like I probably should have remembered when I watched this when I was younger, which is just kind of funny to me. It feels like the kind of thing you'd remember from this movie, is that it has like a modern soundtrack. Like it's just like, how do I explain this? Just like it's a movie about knights. It takes place in like medieval England and stuff. So you'd expect like the like older instruments and music that kind of matches kind of I guess like music you'd use for like movies that take place in the time period. I was thinking of like Lord of the Rings for some reason, but I don't think that's right. I think that's kind of what I'm thinking of in my head, where it was like a lot of instrumentals and stuff. But then this movie has, by modern soundtrack, it's got stuff like The Boys Are Back in Town and the oh my gosh, why am I blanking on the singer? I just listened to the album as songs for like the first time a couple weeks ago. David Bowie. Yeah, he has a song called Golden Years, which that was kind of cool when it popped up in the movie, because I just heard it for the first time. I guess technically not the first time because I've seen this movie, but like sitting down to listen to it like a couple of weeks ago and stuff, listening to that album. But yeah, that song plays during like a dance scene and stuff. Like I know that's something they kind of do with like these kind of movies and things like Bridgerton. I've never watched it, has like instrumental versions of like pop songs and stuff. It kind of almost gives like a similar vibe in a sense with this movie, where it's funny. Like you'll have, like I mentioned like The Boys Are Back in Town, for example, where it's like you have the final flashback scene of like William and his dad, and they're having to say goodbye, and then that song, it cuts to the next scene, the song starts playing, and it like that whenever that would happen in the movie, that like completely would throw me off. But the thing is, like, like Golden Years specifically plays when the characters are at this like banquet and they're dancing and stuff. So it's like kind of funny of just like these songs, besides the time periods being completely different, and this being, it's like it's a comedy, but it has its serious moments. It's like comedy adventure. I don't really know what to call this actually. It's kind of a bit of a lot of things, but. So it's like the songs kind of don't fit, but like they fit the context of the scenes. Like The Boys Are Back in Town plays when the characters go to London for the final matchup, but it's after you find out that they all haven't, you know, William and his group haven't been back to London in years. So like it fits, even though the tone's kind of weird. But that was just something I found as like a really interesting choice through the movie. I kept thinking, like, when that first started happening, of like, or like they have the I don't know what the name of the song is, the song that was like the theme song for the George Lopez show, which that I feel like I get flashbacks to that so hard whenever I hear that song outside the context of that show, because I don't know how it was like for you guys, but I remember it's like very specific for me when I was like really little and I would be in my parents' room kind of late at night or something, like I wouldn't be able to sleep, and this didn't happen very often, but that show would be on. And I remember just sitting in the dark on my parents' bed and seeing the intro for that song and hearing that theme song. And it always just felt so weird. It feels like it was like, what's it called? Like a fever dream. Like you're not even sure if it's like a real memory or not. So it's so weird to hear that song outside of that show. But it's in this movie. It's like early in the movie too, during like a training montage and stuff, but that's like I think the first time it happens with this movie where it's like a modern song and stuff, and up till then the music was like kind of fitting, you know, with the time period and stuff, and that is not just with that song, but that just happening in general threw me off so hard. And it happened and I was like, oh, okay. And kind of seeing where the comedy was going, I was like, oh no, am I gonna like this movie? But yeah, interesting choice with how they did the soundtrack, but things fit. And you know what, I feel like it kind of fits anyway, because it's not like this is again, I'm kind of mentioning Lord of the Rings, maybe because these are both like made in like 2001 and stuff, but you know, with that being like a fantasy movie, you know, you get like set in this world and like the time period and whatever, you're like immersed in it. And then with this movie, it's like it takes place in medieval times, but at the same time it's like some of the hairstyles, especially for the female characters, I especially noticed it with like Jocelyn and her like lady in waiting or something, their hairstyles look kind of like, you know, 90s, and having like colored hair where it's like bits of like dyed red hair, you know, that's always just kind of funny to me with these sorts of movies where it's like the hairstyles or the makeup or whatever do not match. It's not just like sometimes not matching the time period, but also the situations in the movies where it'll be like, oh, this character, I always notice it with like female characters too, it's kind of weird, where it's like this character, I'm making this up, has like, I don't know, lived in a cave or something for like 12 years, but will have like perfect makeup or whatever, you know, of like things where it's like, okay, this should not be, this doesn't match, but like it's like there's stuff like that, or there's like a good balance with like how the characters speak in this and some of the humor as well, where they don't talk in like a completely old-timey way, you know, but it's like occasionally with the words and stuff, it's kind of like thrown in, or like with some of the jokes as well. I guess like the timing with it and stuff, or some of the type of jokes where it feels kind of more like modern, but there's like a really good balance with it, of like, even though you're sometimes having these like old-timey words or whatever, some of the situations, it's like just modern enough where it's like you get the meaning and it's still like really funny, but like at the same time it fits within the world and everything. I don't really know how to completely explain it unless you like, you know, watch the movie yourself and stuff, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting contrast with like the where and when and stuff of like in the world of like when the movie like takes place and stuff, but then there's so many things that are kind of modern, not, you know, like modern of like I'm watching this in 2026, but like movie that was, you know, made in 2001, but at the same time it like doesn't feel like I mentioned like the 90s hairstyles or some of the characters, for example, but it doesn't really feel like super dated. I don't really know how to describe it. And I do definitely want to talk more about like the humor and stuff. I think the humor best comes across with, and I'm finally letting myself talk about the friend group, about William's companions and stuff. They're so fun. They feel like a real group of friends and everything. I have like individual notes. They're all like kind of short and stuff, but like he gains his companions as he's like going through the movie and stuff, and they all know like when they meet him and stuff, who William is, that, you know, his name is William. He's not actually a knight. He's not of noble birth, but they're so loyal to him and like rooting for his success and everything, that his identity like doesn't matter to them. You know, they like want him to succeed and to be a knight and everything. And they all, it's not just like his friends towards William, it's the reverse. It's like William towards his friends as well. They all just care about each other so much. It's really nice. Like he starts off, like I mentioned the character Roland, for example. He starts off with two other characters at the start of the movie, like after his master dies, because there's these like two other people that were also like squires and stuff to this knight. I can't remember the name of the guy they all worked for. There's Roland, who's like this older, not older as in like in his, I'm making this up, like 60s or 70s or whatever, but like middle-aged dude, Roland, and he's the one out of the three of them that's kind of like the most sort of cautious, not in like a cowardly way or anything, but he's someone of like and it's really funny with the character, because there's like beef within the group, honestly, with the character. I'll talk about him in a bit, that Roland kind of seems to have like wait, no, it's not Roland. It's two other characters that have beef with each other. Never mind. I was gonna say like, oh yeah, Roland's the like cautious character, and the person he has beef with is the group gambler. But no, it's between two other characters. Yeah, no, but Roland is someone that's kind of like out of the original three characters of William and Roland and Watt. Which is funny, the name Watt, how it's like spelled. It's not Watt as in like light bulbs, you know, like W-A-T-T, it's W-A-T. That's the helpful thing for me, of like a lot of the time, pretty much almost all the time actually, I'll have subtitles on and getting to see like the spellings of characters' names. It really helps with like my notes too, even though I didn't write it down for like every single character. This always happens with these movies, of like I'll be like remembering names, except always for like one character for whatever reason. In this case, it's the rival guy and the dad. Anyway, yeah, it's Roland, Watt, and William. And even if it was just the three of them, I think the movie would still be fun, but I am glad they gained more companions, where like Roland, it seems like he's like the oldest of the group and kind of the most reasonable out of everything. Like he's the guy that doesn't really want to take chances and just kind of wants to go along with what he has and everything. And Watt is like kind of the exact opposite, where he's loud and he curses often and is like a little bit dumb. But the character I found the most funny, he's like the really loud guy that's like cursing and kind of threatening people with like violence and stuff. He's not, well, he does get into like fights with people, but he's not as like violent as he tries to like kind of play himself off as. And then William is, you know, like the prideful one that, you know, is always willing to like take a chance on things, not in like a as the extreme as the gambler guy of the group I'll talk about in a minute. He's like their next companion, but the three of them as a trio kind of like balance each other out well. But yeah, it starts out with the three of them and their master dies, and you know, Roland and Watt, they want to they're not really sure what to do, and William's like, hey, I'm gonna put on his suit of armor and pretend to be the guy we work for, and get to win, which he didn't have to do like too much anyway. He had to go do like one more jousting attack and wins and gets the money, and the other two guys are like, okay, cool, we have money, we can eat, we're gonna go back to London and get some food or something. And William talks them into like, hey, what if I became a knight for real and pretended to be not myself and win a bunch of matches, which is less so about like, okay, we need to like put food on the table, but also because it's revealed like he has this dream of being a knight, and the other two guys are like, no, we want to, we're poor, we need to eat, let's just take what we have and go. And the whole conversation with them, William trying to convince them, is kind of funny, where he eventually tells them like, hey, if you can like take the coins away from me, because they're like trying to split the winnings, you can go, but if you can't, you have to stay with me and help me and everything. It's not just like traveling with him, but they have to, he's going to pretend to be a knight, so they have to like be his squires and like actually work for him and everything. They tackle William to the ground and they get the money, so you think like, okay, that's it, they're going to go, but William like talks them into it, and they're all friends, they probably all know each other. I don't know in terms of like Watt with the others. You don't get him in any flashbacks, but they go with them and stuff, and it's like the three of them, and then they I think they find out, or they hear of like, oh, to be able to compete, you gotta, I know I'm like half summarizing things, but I feel like I kind of need to introduce the companions a little and talk about them and stuff. You gotta be able to trace back your lineage like 4 or 6 generations or whatever, and they need like physical writing for that. They don't got it. And then what do you know, they run into the gambler guy. He's also a character that's really funny. His name's Jeff. It's not spelled Jeff. It's with a G. Let me see, actually. I still have the thing pulled up. Or wait, was it Jeff? It looks like it would be pronounced like Jeffrey. It's like Geoffrey. It's like pronounced in a way where it's not how I would have probably read it or would have thought it's with a G. I'm pretty sure they call him like Jeff or something. But yeah, he's the gambler of the group. The gambling, thankfully, doesn't last throughout the whole movie, but I have to mention about that because the way they meet him is really funny. Where it's like the 3 characters, they're going along this road or whatever, and William's decided he's gonna be a knight, and they don't know immediately, they need like the physical proof, but it's kind of funny too. I was watching this, I mentioned I didn't watch this all in one sitting, and when I paused the movie, I was watching this on like YouTube TV. My dad was there. I was like eating breakfast this morning, and I paused because I was done with breakfast and I was gonna like go do stuff. I had things to do, and it's right when Jeffrey whatever is about to be introduced. I'm so glad I got to pause and didn't continue, because I even saw just a little bit of on screen. He's naked. He's introduced naked. He ends up naked multiple times in the movie. I mean, you don't see him from like like the front genitals. You do see his butt though. It's kind of so weird to me, like he's just like nude. I mean, it's for like reasons in the story of that he's a gambler. He can't really control his gambling very well, to the point where he doesn't have money either. I think like almost no one in the group like has money. I think the one that ends up that seems like she's doing the best is probably Kate. She's a blacksmith. She has her own like place and everything. But everyone else seems just kind of like they're dirt poor. But anyway, they meet Jeff, the gambler guy, and he's gambled away everything. He's a writer, actually. I should be referring to him as a writer, not like really a gambler, but it's like important in his introduction, and they just meet him in this road and he's going the other way and he has no clothes, and I don't remember how the heck their conversation starts, but they're basically just like, dude, why are you naked? And he makes up this whole story about like being robbed, I think, so they like take pity on him and stuff. And then he has to admit about his gambling problem, and I do like that the gambling problem does, you know, it's a problem, it affects things in the story and stuff. And they're not going to take Jeff with them at first. He's saying of like, hey, you're gonna need, he's saying of like, oh yeah, you guys need me, actually, you can, because at first I think he's trying to get them to pay. Oh wait, I remember, because he's like, I'm this guy, I'm a writer, you've never heard of me or whatever, and or how have you guys not heard of me? And then he's saying like, hey, if you pay me, I can like write you stuff, and that's when he informs them of like, oh, I'm to joust, you gotta have the documents, and they don't have any money to pay him, and he's like, okay, if you guys can just get me at least some damn clothes, I'll do the writing. And he ends up joining their team. I don't know how they end up, oh no, I think they still have some money, so they do like get him clothes and stuff. He ends up, I think, nude like 1 or 2 more times, which is also from gambling. There's a part where it's also off screen where he gets in a fight with one of the other, I think with Watt, and you see in the subtitles and the noise of the clothes ripping or whatever, but you don't, you know, he's in like clothes after that. He gets some cool outfits though. He gets like a golden colored like robe and stuff that's pretty neat. But yeah, like what a way to introduce a character. But anyway, I do like this gambling does come into play like kind of early in the story, where he ends up gambling everything away again, and Will has to like bail him out with some money. At first I thought he wasn't going to, but like William's he's like a good guy, you know, he wants to help people and stuff, he's a nice guy, and he has to like pay back what Jeff owes. And then after that, the gambling problem, I mean, there's still gambling in the movie. It's kind of funny, actually. There's a point later on, because you'll sometimes see the characters, it's usually the whole group except for William for whatever reason, and they'll be at like taverns and stuff, and they end up making this bet of, it's kind of a funny scene of like William, if he'll win these fights against these like French guys and stuff, and William ends up actually throwing the match because of something with Jocelyn, and then the group ends up kind of mad because, you know, their money goes down the drain. That whole scene is just really funny, actually, where, you know, the people that are a little bit more rowdy in the group immediately want to do this bet, and Roland is like the last one they need to convince, of like, no, let's not do this and whatever. And the French people that are trying to like get them into the bed and making fun of them, they make some kind of religious comment. I think it's about like the Pope being French or something, and Roland has this line of like, oh, the Pope may be French, but Jesus is English, Your Honor, whatever, and they all agree to this bet. And William does end up winning, and it's kind of funny. The group ends up so smug sometimes, especially when it's about like money, where Jeff ends up like very gleefully taking these guys' money and everything, and gives them just enough to like buy a drink or whatever. There's just so many funny scenes like that. Oh, that just made me laugh. But yeah, Jeff, I feel like out of the group, Jeff and Watt were like the funniest. They're the two that have like the beef with each other, where Watt wants to like fight everybody, and Jeff's someone that's like kind of a bit cheeky anyway, where he'll like mess with people, and especially when he's in what I'll call like announcer mode, you know, at the tournaments of announcing William and giving all these grand speeches and everything, and he looks like he's having so much fun with it. Actually, I'll say like a lot of the actors, but especially the people in like William's group, look like they're having a lot of fun with this movie, of like playing some of these kind of goofier characters. But yeah, Jeff and Watt, they get into fights. It's usually like Jeff does something especially early on with his gambling, and Watt gets pissed. Like literally when they meet each other, Watt's like, hey, if you betray us, I'm gonna like tear out your insides and shit. I mentioned that he curses. I don't know what the rating for this movie is actually. It's too tiny on this poster. It looks like it almost says PG, but I'm not. No, it looks like it says PG-13. That feels about right. Like they don't say fuck in this movie, but instead they end up saying, I think it's Fong, but now that I'm older and stuff, I can tell with the context and the sentence of like, and it's always just Watt that ends up saying it, like how he's using it. I'm like, oh yeah, he's totally like basically saying fuck here. It's kind of funny, but yeah, he's very kind of angry all the time, like threatening people, and so he has a temper, and he like threatens Jeff immediately of like, if you betray us, I'm gonna like rip out your organs and shit. And then he ends up betraying them in the fact of not like giving away William's identity, but just the gambling. And they do get into a fight, but they're like messing with each other throughout and making comments throughout like the entire movie, and it's just it's so funny. And then I think their last companion, it's Kate. She's a blacksmith. She ends up making like some pretty cool armor for William. Yeah, I think because of like the time period this takes place in, there's like sexist comments and stuff by like a lot of the main characters, even sometimes like William and his group, about like, like women and stuff. I think that's how Kate originally joins, where William talks her into like working on his armor for free because he ends up meeting her because none of the other all the other blacksmiths are male. They don't want to work on his armor, and they're like, oh, we're gonna send you to that woman over there or whatever. And Kate's like, oh, are they sending you here or mad at me because I'm a woman or whatever? But she ends up joining the group, and she's a pretty fun character too. She's kind of more like Roland, of like being a bit like not as goofy, kind of a bit more serious, but she does get some like funny moments as well. But yeah, she makes a lot of like cool armor where it's like it doesn't really cover William all the way, but it's like super strong. And I like that she even puts her own like markings on it and stuff, and says like, oh, in case anyone admires it, they'll like know whose handiwork it is and stuff. But I think she's like a nice way to balance the group. But together, because you do see plenty of scenes of them with William, but a lot of the time you'll just see them without William, or it's like a couple of people and they're like making jokes about things throughout the movie. I especially like it during the jousting scenes where it's like they'll help William and stuff and like getting on his horse, but you'll see them sometimes watching and they'll like make like snarky comments or whatever. Oh man, I wish I could remember the dialogue. There's this like one part during one of the jousting scenes. It's like Kate and two other people, and I think Watt says something stupid and Kate doesn't say anything and just like gives this look, and it was like really funny. I don't remember, but yeah, I think part of what makes the comedy so good isn't just the writing, but also like the timing. The actors get it down really well and everything. I think really kind of just what makes it, honestly. Let me see, like the letter writing scene, for example. Like it is a nice scene where they're talking about like Kate. I didn't even remember like had a husband that had died. You don't really like hear much about it. It's kind of just mentioned once, but it's like stuff like that mentioned in the letter scene of the group and their romance experiences, and they're pouring their hearts out in this letter that William gives to Jocelyn and stuff. So it's like a really nice scene in that sense. But at the same time, it does kind of give this feeling of like, even though it's like in a letter format and stuff, of like if you were trying to text a girl and your buddies are there and they're like trying to give advice, because a lot of the lines are like kind of heartfelt, and it's like in its poetry sort of way, even if like a little bit. They're not really like cheesy, actually. They do make a comment at the beginning of like one of the people mentions of like, oh, talk about like her breasts or whatever, and I thought Kate was gonna make a comment about like, oh, that's gross of you or whatever, and then she just straight up says like, oh yeah, her, like referring to Jocelyn, like her breasts aren't impressive or whatever. She just like says it out of nowhere, and that made me laugh pretty hard. But yeah, there's like moments like that where it's like the situations, you know, feel like kind of modern in that sense. But yeah, the friend group was like my favorite, and just how much they all care about each other, and William and everything. Like William has some like funny scenes with them as well. Was just honestly my favorite part of this movie, to the point where I was just like, man, I wish I'd watched this with my friends. It's kind of funny, actually. I'd gotten to pick some movies with my friend group, my movie group recently, and I feel like they were kind of duds in a sense. I mean, I liked, I think, most of them, but or no, I pretty much liked all of them, but I could tell the group kind of didn't really feel the same way as me, like as excited on some of them. And it makes me wish, like, damn, if I'd picked something like this, I just know it would have been a winner. But I feel like this is a kind of movie, especially with its kind of like humor and stuff, that like, you know, you can like watch it on your own, of course, but like is also fun to probably like watch with a group and stuff. It's also just genuinely really good. But the emotional scenes are good as well, especially when it gets like a bit more dramatic towards the end. Like there's this part when William's going to be like put to death, and there's this prince character I mentioned earlier. His name's Prince Edward. Earlier in the movie, I don't remember around when, it's when like William's winning all these tournaments and stuff, and the prince is there and he wants to compete, and because he's royalty, I'm assuming it's probably like a crime to like injure someone of like such a noble status and everything, so all of the competitors, even like the rival character, are like bowing out of that specific fight, but William, even knowing who this guy is, goes to fight him anyway and stuff. And it's because of this that it ends up saving him later, where Prince Edward shows up like when William's gonna get killed, and not only tells him of like, hey, you do have the qualities of a knight and you've like proved yourself, even though you're like not allowed to be a knight. He just not only saves William's life, but like knights him on the spot, you know, like the sword to the shoulder and everything. And I really like that, not just like paying forward this like kindness from earlier, but also you know, the fact that William, like, he does get to become a knight, but it's through like his own hard work and nothing to do with his status and everything. I really like that for the message of the movie, but it's such a good scene. It was like scenes like that towards the end that I just thought, man, this movie, that like really convinced me of like, man, this movie, you know, this is so good. And then the final fight's cool too. It just feels like it has real stakes. You find out the rival character is cheating and actually trying to kill William. You know, normally they have to use lances, but they're, you know, like kind of dull at the end. They're like round, so they don't like straight up kill each other. But the rival is cheating, and he has one that's, you know, pointy to like stab William, and William ends up injured. And you know, he already could have like run away before he like gets knighted and stuff. Which the timing of him getting arrested happens like 5 minutes before like the fight he's been wanting the whole movie. But yeah, even when he's injured and like the crowd's cheering his name, because his friends find out like, oh shit, you know, there's cheating going on, but no one interrupts the fight or says like, hey, this guy's cheating, which maybe would get him disqualified or like arrested or something, especially because like the prince is there watching and everything. But no, William's injured and his friends know, and he you know, he has his honor and stuff. He's like gotta continue with this fight. It did make me worried. I thought like, shit, is he gonna like, you know, die at the end? Is this gonna be one of those where it's like the main character finally accomplishes his goal and proves himself and everything, but then, you know, dies at the end? But no, he gets to live. I mean, he's like injured, but you know, he ends up fine, I guess. But the stakes do feel real of like, you know, you don't know if he's gonna like live or not. He's injured. William straight up has to finish the fight with like no armor and the lance, and he can't really hold it. It's like strapped to his arm and stuff. And he's saying, oh man, that's gonna be like such an easy kill. But he wins, and he gets the big kiss with Jocelyn, and his friends are all proud of him, and everybody's chanting his name in the stadium and stuff, and his dad is like super proud of him. It's just so nice. Like it is. I mean, you know, I feel like for this kind of movie, you probably would expect like a happy ending with that. But I do like that there's like just enough tension where it like is kind of a, you know, it has like its serious scenes and stuff and everything. I've been mentioning about comedy, but it's not like first hand specifically like a comedy. It's more of like action adventure, really. But there's like just enough serious scenes where, you know, the story takes itself seriously and everything, and there's like a lot of emotional scenes where you could think by the end of like, yeah, is he gonna live or not? It doesn't feel like so predictable or guaranteed of you're thinking like, yeah, now he's gonna win and everything. No, I couldn't remember the ending of this movie. I barely remembered anything from it. You know, because again, I was like so young when I watched this. And this is probably, if I had to guess, like my second time seeing this anyway. I didn't know if he was gonna live or not. I especially love when he wins. There's sort of, it almost seems like there's two versions of the scene. It was a little confusing, but I'm glad the way they did it, where at first it gets played kind of comedic, and then the scene happens again, but this time it's like the same events don't happen, and it's like more of kind of like the serious-ish ending of the rival getting thrown off his horse, and the crowd cheers for William. But like the first time that happens, let me explain. That might sound kind of confusing. It's really funny because throughout the entire movie, the villain, he has this very specific phrase. There's like certain things him and William say to each other, where William is saying like, yeah, I'm gonna win and you're gonna end up on your back and stuff, which happens. But the rival has this phrase he always taunts William with. It's like a 3-part phrase. I don't remember what it is. And I love that when he falls off his horse, what originally happens is you get the viewpoint, like POV of the rival, of him on the floor, and he's looking up on the ground, and William's friends pop up like one by one, and they're like each saying part of the phrase or something until their heads are all like bumping into each other in a circle, and they all just look so smug. And then you get to see the scene. It like happens again of like, but you can tell it's like the same thing of the rival falling off the horse, and then, you know, the movie moves on. But I love that you get this one little part of the group, you know, kind of being kind of like in your face to this guy, because he, you know, he not only had like William arrested and he was gonna marry Jocelyn and like not treat her well, but like he was going to kill William and everything. So I mean, I personally think this guy should have gotten arrested, but whatever. You know, it's so nice for the group to kind of get the last laugh at this person. It feels nice, like as the viewer too, of this guy getting put in his place in like kind of a comedic way. But it feels about right and everything. I like the movie sort of has both ways, you know. Oh man, what was I gonna say? Shoot, I don't remember. That's okay. But yeah, the ending's a happy ending and stuff. It ends up good for everybody. And that's pretty much the movie. I know we spent like an hour talking about it. But you know what? That's okay and stuff. I just really loved this. Honestly, I thought like, oh, I'm probably gonna like it or it's gonna be fun, but like, no, this is except for the fart joke at the end, this is a 10 out of 10 movie for me. I need to watch this again at some point. I feel like I don't really say that a lot, and I was surprised that like this is my first time seeing it in years, and I feel so strongly about it. But it was genuinely just so good, and I'm so glad I decided to rewatch it because I have a couple other movies I'm meaning to rewatch. I have saved in YouTube TV. I also have another movie that I haven't seen since I was a kid, but I remember a bit more of. Ace Ventura. There's two Ace Ventura movies. One of them's Pet Detective, and then the sequel is called When Nature Calls. We've apparently had Pet Detective on DVD, but I wasn't allowed to see it for some reason when I was younger, so I didn't know it existed. I've seen it once. I remember I didn't really like it. It doesn't feel as funny to me as the sequel. I also don't. There was like other reasons I didn't like it, but I don't remember. And I also can't remember why my parents didn't want me to watch it. But they did let me watch When Nature Calls. We have it in VHS. I'm so glad we didn't give that one away. But I watched that when I was younger. I think I remember that one more, not just because I watched like a ton of like Jim Carrey movies when I was younger. But also there's a lot of really funny scenes. I mostly remember the part when he it's with the rhino. You know what, I'll probably end up making a video on it, but that one I want to get around to watching too. I'll have to wait on that though, because I'll be like going out of town and stuff soon where I'm not gonna have access to YouTube TV. I will have access to Disney Plus though. That'll be cool. There's some Star Wars stuff and some other things I want to check out. Maybe I'll talk about it when I get back, or record it off my phone or something. My recording. But yeah, there's some more things like Ace Ventura that I want to give a rewatch to that I haven't seen in a while, or like Pulp Fiction. I didn't grow up with that, but I feel like I should probably watch it again. But yeah, that'll be fun for me. But yeah, I'm so glad I gave this movie a chance. I almost wasn't going to. The only reason I actually like watched it at this time was because I watched whatever the channel is that has the honest trailer videos, and they did one for this movie, and I watched most of it and stuff, and I was looking through it and I was like, oh, it's that movie I hadn't seen in years. Okay, this actually looks pretty good, and how they were talking about it and stuff, and the jokes they make, and I thought, okay, I feel like I should give this another shot. If I hadn't seen that video, I wouldn't have watched this. I like specifically went to look for it on YouTube TV. But yeah, I'm so glad I did. This was genuinely so good. And the thing is, I wasn't gonna make a video. I've been mostly just like making Letterboxd reviews and only really talking about movies if I feel like I need to talk about them, or I just feel like there's things I want to verbally say and stuff. But like when I was getting towards the end of this and I was like, this is a 10 out of 10 from me, I was like, okay, I gotta talk about it. And yeah, I know this was an hour, but I needed to get all my thoughts out. Less notes than I thought I'd have because I was just so absorbed into it. It's funny, it's almost midnight. I'm actually having a tomorrow's a very special day actually, and I have plans in the morning, and I need to go to bed, but it was worth staying up so I could talk about this. Yeah. All right. Thanks for listening. I'm gonna post this like as soon as I'm done talking and stuff. I've kind of been spreading out movie reviews, but I'm like, nah, I need this like now.